everybody? Welcome on into OneNation. Andy Petrillo, Jordan Wilson.
Hello.
This is going to be the Concacaf Nations League edition, my friend, because the Canadian men are back in action. They're going, stop me if you've heard this before, for their first trophy in 23 years. It's going to happen in Las Vegas. I will be there. I am very excited about this. Not so much about the, I don't know, I think I saw 39 degrees. By the way, can I just say this?
How much?
Yeah. It's going to be like an inferno. And I will say this to everybody out there. Ooh. I am 100% that Canadian who complains about the cold and then complains about the heat.
I mean, but 39 that's excessive.
It is.
I have a lot to say. So I remember watching the game when Canada beat Honduras 4-1. We were in the studio and he said, "We're going to Vegas, baby." And I know I'm new. I just passed probation here. I have a new job. But I know if anyone's going to Vegas, if they had to send one person, I know it's you. You're the GOAT. We talk about it. How excited are you to go to Vegas?
I'm always excited to be where the action is, without a doubt. I mean, obviously, I'm very excited about this. It's always great as a host, as an analyst. You know, I mean, maybe you'll start to appreciate this too now that you're on the media side. I keep saying that. But, like, we love spending time with players.
Yeah.
It just gives you an insight into their life. It allows you to create some sort of, you know, connection, hopefully, whether, you know, when you sit down and interview them. And sometimes even just when you talk to them, it doesn't even have to be on camera. It's about creating those connections. And I don't want to sound like an old-timer host or reporter, but it's so true. I feel like we've lost that in many ways.
Yeah.
I understand where the industry is going and a lot of teams now, because media itself has grown. There are so many facets and avenues to media. It's not just your traditional television or newspapers anymore, right? Then you've got the magazines and the podcasts and like all this streaming, everything, right? So you have all these people wanting access to the athletes. So I understand that they protect them a lot more than they used to. But I just remember walking into locker rooms, dressing rooms, and just being able to sit down beside an athlete and just shoot the breeze and get to know them. And then when you develop that kind of connection, it's very easy for you to call them up and be like, "Hey, I want to do this feature.
For sure.
You game?" And they're more willing to do it because now they know who you are.
Yeah.
So that's why I like that FaceTime, 100%.
Absolutely, and I think it's needed. I think also too, with you going to Vegas, I want Canada to win. I want you to have that time with the players, but I also want you to do me a favor as well. Okay, I want you to go and play some roulette.
Yeah. What do you want me to? Oh no, what is this? Are you giving me money to go gamble?
For the podcasters.
What is this? Oh my God.
I just dropped a couple dimes and nickels and quarters. This is all I had in my change purse.
You know what?
Shout out to my grandma, because even when I go on a little trip, she's always giving me like $5, $10. And I have to shout out to her because this is back in the day. She doesn't understand inflation. She's 91. So she give me $10. She's thinking that's big money. But look, this is enough for you to start.
So $2.35.
That's a lot. Actually, give me back a couple of
Give
quarters,
me that.
I just have to bet on black, do roulette. I will split the winnings when you come back.
So okay? I am the worst. I'm not a gambler. I've said this before. Even at blackjack, I will sit at the table and I will count with my fingers. Okay, right? So I'm not really good. And I do like playing the slot machines, but it's the traditional, I want to crank that thing. Quick story before we do get into Nations League. My husband and I, we were at a casino and, you know, I was playing like the 5-cent thingies. I hit $100.
Look at you.
I thought I was rich. I'm like, babe, we got to cash out. We got to get out of here because people are going to try and rob us now. That's where I was. I'm like, we just hit $100. We's out, right? Anyway, so.
Did you cash out?
I cashed out.
Love it.
And bought myself a drink and then I left. All right, so Nations League, we have a really special guest who's going to be joining us too. So Victor Montagliani, president of CONCACAF. We're going to be talking to him and we're going to get just, you know, his thoughts on the progress of this tournament, you know, the idea behind it, how he feels it's progressing. Is it kind of living up to what he thought, you know, this tournament would be? Obviously, now they've introduced it on the women's side too. So lots of excitement. We're going to talk to Victor about that. But I do want to, first of all, get your thoughts when it comes to Canada. So they've made the Final Four. Canada's taking on Panama. The other semifinal will be Mexico versus USA. And the final will go June 18th. Obviously, fingers crossed, we're all hoping Canada will be in that final. So who they'll take on, USA, Mexico. They've beaten both of them.
Yes.
But, you know, when you look at this team, do you consider Canada the favorites?
Yes, I do. I think they are. I think when I look at the squad and the way that they've developed, I think that they have the best chance of doing it. When I say favorites, am I looking at the 4 teams saying Canada should go and win? History would say no, but I'm looking at what they have in that lineup, in that squad, the depth. I could see them doing it. I think I'm looking for the Canada that had that first half against Belgium. That just came out guns blazing, or even when they played Honduras at home on March 28th, the 4-1 win, that good start with Leon scoring back-to-back, like the 8th minute, the 11th minute. I'm looking for that Canada that was just infused with passion. Everyone's on the same page. And this is a stepping stone, like no question about it. I think that's a question for you to ask. I'm not telling you what to do. I know you know how to do your job. But in terms of this is like that area right now with that Canadian team is where they know every time they step onto the pitch, there are eyes on them. I think before that wasn't the case. So you're looking at this team, they can do it. I think they're favorites, but I think it's so important to beat Panama, get into the finals, and then do well in the finals. Even if you lose by a margin, it's just getting to that last game and being close to having a match for some silverware, for some trophies.
Yeah, the sports psychologist, you know, but this is where you earn your money, right? Because as a player, you can't look to Sunday.
Yeah.
You can't.
You have to be in the moment.
You're very excited. You're in the Final Four. You're right. You have to be in the moment. You have to get the job done against Panama first, right? And I know a lot of times players say that, coaches say that, oh, it's about the here and now. How much, though, does your mind start to race? Yeah. How much if you have a 1-0 lead and there are 2 minutes to go in the game, you know, do you really have to lock it down, right? So you can't be thinking of June 18th at all. My only concern, and of course I think Canada are favorites because, you know, we've seen what they've done in the Concacaf region. But when I look at what has happened since the World Cup, they've played twice, Concacaf Nations League. And I look at, you know, Panama has played 4 times, you know, between Nations League and also friendlies. Whoever ends up going through, I look at Mexico, who's played 5 times. I look at the United States, who's also played 5 times. They've been playing games.
Yeah.
That's where I'm just a little bit, you know, again, the Canadians clearly playing games with their pro teams, although not all of them. Alphonso Davies, you know, we're going to have to dive into him a little bit, right, because of injury there. So I just wonder a little bit. Maybe that's what it is. It's not concern. I wonder, will they just hit the ground running like we've seen them do before, because these other teams have played more since the World Cup?
It's a valid question. And then a team that is just getting back together after 3 days and then they have to go play a semifinal game. It's peculiar. It's not normal.
Yeah.
But then you also think the optimist in me is like, this is a brotherhood. These guys know each other. There aren't too many new faces coming into camp.
True.
So it's all about business. Whenever I talk to any of them or whisper about, is something coming home? Are you guys going to get a championship or a chip, a trophy in 23 years? Everyone seems like, yo, this is the time. Like they're not doubting, oh, well, we need a week to get our legs under us. They're looking like, hey, steam full ahead. They're going for it. So I feel good. Feel good going into this week.
Player you're interested to see?
Has to be Kone for me.
Okay.
Because his career so far is strange because so much has happened so fast. He's made a huge leap from amateur football, CF Montreal, and then a huge leap going to the championship in England, which is really like England's league. I know the Premier League, but that's the world's league. But if you talk to anyone in England, like the championship is where a lot of those English players are playing, and a lot of top players around the world are also playing. It's just a dog-eat-dog type of league. So I want to see out of the 16 appearances that he's had, and he's had an assist, and he's had very good games. He's played full 90s, and he's also had games where he's been taken off at half. And it's just been a learning process. So I want to see how he hits the ground running coming into camp and coming into the semifinals. So I know he's going to play. I also believe he's going to start. But it's just how many things he can do. You saw at the World Cup as well that you can see glimpses of him playing well, but he was still so raw and young. But when you get a season of 6 months where you're training every day in England, have these eyes on you, you can't slip, you can't take days off. I want to see how that translates into the Canadian side now.
He wasn't intimidated at all at the World Cup, but you're right. There was just the experience that you
For
can't
sure.
rush. You can't rush that, so that's what he needed. For me, I want to see, there's a lot of players, but to me, Jonathan Osorio coming back from injury, obviously got the game in with Toronto FC, but we keep talking about this midfield, the Canadian men's team, and, you know, who's really going to kind of take that over. Ismail Kone, obviously, is somebody who has grown. Stefan Eustachio, we know, is there. Atiba, obviously, is an option, but he's passed the torch, right?
Sure.
So, and Jonathan Osorio just came out flying. He was just having this incredible year. And I remember interviewing him a couple times and saying, do you feel like you're just yourself again? Because we know the injuries he was dealing with, especially with the concussion. It's just, you never know. Like, that's a tricky one, right? And he came out and looked like the Osorio of old and then goes and gets that MCL strain. But now he's back, so I just want to see how he's going to look in that midfield. And I feel like it also goes without saying, we're really excited to see Alphonso Davies. In particular, like I said, once again, he was dealing with an injury, didn't get to finish off the season with Bayern Munich. So with him coming back, he's been practicing, so he's been on the field, but, hasn't played in a match. Do you start him against Panama?
If he's fit and feels good, do it. We've been in this position before, going into the World Cup. Everyone's asking, is he playing the first game against Belgium? Is he not? Look, maybe I'm an Alphonso Davies fan, a diehard hardcore, but I think him at 70%, 80%, I'm still playing him. As long as his mind is ready to compete and do what he needs to do for the team, he's still that X factor. He still has that quality of being on that left flank, getting a ball across, cutting in, combining. He's still shifty. As long as his brain and his mind and his heart is ready to compete, I think play him. Now, you obviously have to think about if he's 50% and he's there and he's doing a sprint and he's holding his hamstring, obviously that's not the time to play him. But if he feels good and he feels up for it, I think you got to start him. I want to know how you feel about it. Would you start a player that is 80% even though he's the big dog of a team?
Yeah, I hear from a lot of people, past coaches and GMs when I've asked them this as well about a star player heading into, a lot of times I talk to guys in the hockey world in the playoffs, and they always say if a guy's 80% is still better than another guy's 100%, you put him in. But to your point, you don't put him in if he's 80% at the real risk of furthering that injury, worsening that injury. I don't know. I think Alphonso Davies is tip-top shape, and I know John Herdman and his staff don't mess around. The second he landed, they probably once again, monitored him, did all kinds of stress tests to see where he's at. And I think if they feel that he's ready and the player himself is like, I'm good to go, this is it. Yeah. Jardo, this is the trophy they're going for the first time in 23 years. They're not messing around. They'll monitor him because, of course, if you beat Panama, you want for sure him to go the full 90, I would assume, against your opponent in the final. So, I trust that they'll make the best decision for the player, but most definitely for the team. And now joining our show to talk a little bit more about Concacaf Nations League, the president himself of Concacaf, Victor Montagliani. Really appreciate you taking the time here, Victor. And I know this is an exciting time for you because once again, we get to crown a Concacaf champion. When you first introduced this new tournament, Nations League, it was introduced in 2017. They started playing in 2018. You also had a pandemic that interrupted things. You had called this a watershed moment for Concacaf to introduce this. Do you think it's living up to what you thought it would be?
Yes, it has. And actually even beyond my expectations, because I've now seen, there's a few things that have happened. One, you see the large investment made by a lot of countries that now have huge aspirations through the Nations League for Gold Cup, but also the coming up World Cup that we're obviously hosting in our region. In fact, there's little things that have happened along the way that make you go, wow. For instance, League One in the UK has never stopped for an international break, but they had to because of the Nations League, because of the players that were being called out to some of our, maybe developing nations. So you can see how it's had an impact on development, on player recruitment as well. And obviously, even the sort of development within even the top tier, last time, now we have two new teams in the Nations League Final Four, Panama and Canada. And, our sort of the El Clasico of U.S. and Mexico are now semifinalists, not finalists. So those things are what I call markers of a changing tide in CONCACAF.
Victor, what are you most excited about going into this week in terms of the finals?
Really to see, especially obviously Panama's going to be a very difficult team. I thought they were very unlucky in World Cup qualifying. They sort of almost didn't believe themselves in the last couple windows. But I really to see, especially our three, what I call host nations for 26, they're not going to get too many opportunities to play in what I call really meaningful games. Friendlies are great, but friendlies are friendlies, and as you can see, you're whipping out six substitutions at halftime. Some of the top tier countries are not really bringing their A teams. This is an opportunity to really show what your team has in preparation. The Gold Cup's the same. to look at some also players that are on the bubble. So I'm going to be really interested to see how our three host nations approach this cycle, and also the players, because at the end of the day, it's all great World Cup, but also you want to put some trophies in the trophy case. And for a few of our countries, starting with ours, the trophy case is a little bit empty when it comes to the men's side.
You touched on it because the schedule, as we know, is going to be a bit challenging for the three countries, and let's just talk Canada in particular here, because they are hosting in 2026, so they get the automatic qualification. And we know that World Cup qualifying allows you to formulate your team, that competitive edge, get the games under your belt. So how important was it then to revamp the CONCACAF schedule with Nations League playing a role in having these teams be able to qualify for Copa America? How else are you trying to help these teams get competitive matches here so they can prepare for 2026?
Yeah, I almost, you almost felt like a mad scientist at one point there with the calendar, because the pandemic didn't help. You had a Winter World Cup, you know, which is obviously not traditional, and we were trying to figure out the best way to sort of balance. And also you understand players have, they're playing with their club teams too. So, World Cup qualifying was a grind with the octagonal, as we witnessed, but then we also needed to balance our new. And also, the one thing we're doing in our next Nations League, which starts in the fall, is also understanding that our three host nations also need to prepare a little bit. And so that's why the format changed, where we now have a group stage and then straight into a quarterfinal, where our top four teams will start quarterfinals. Now, that puts the quarterfinals on knife edge for a couple of reasons. One, you're qualifying again for a Final Four, but also it's a qualification process to the Copa America, which we are co-hosting with Commonwealth next summer in the U.S. So it's great that we can help them out, but also it puts a lot more pressure on these teams to perform in these games now.
Victor, what are the objectives specifically with the women's side? I know we're talking about the men's side we have in a few days, but what are the objectives going into the women's side of the Nations League?
Well, what we did was, first and foremost, we launched a strategy in 2019, right before the Women's World Cup in France, which really was the basis of that was to really give more opportunities to women's national teams, but in women's football development throughout the region, all 41. We knew what we had at the top end with the U.S. and Canada, who had been successful, the U.S. in the Olympics and the women's World, obviously being World Cup champions. Our Canadian team being successful at the Olympics, not so much so on the World Cup as of yet. Hopefully we can change that this summer. But the reality is that those two teams have been great for the last decade plus, but we were really needed to push from the bottom so that we could really expand sort of the opportunities for women's football in our region. And and I can say that in short order, we see that success. We have 6 teams going to Australia and New Zealand, and teams that were not even on people's lips 4 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're at a Women's World Cup. That's amazing to me. Haiti, and obviously Jamaica was there last time, but Panama, that's a fantastic achievement in short order. We still have a lot of work to do, and but to me the real stories are what's happening from the bottom up in our women's strategy and with the women's sort of development in our region. And I think the Nations League is just the beginning of that. Again, giving the opportunities to these countries to compete at their level as well. There's no use for a smaller country that really is starting out on this journey to start competing with the U.S. and Canada, but they need to start competing at their level and also start competing at the next level above. And I think this structure really helps them with that, and obviously culminating in our women's Gold Cup as well, where again, the top end of it will compete again.
Yeah, really excited for the Women's Gold Cup. I know when you made the announcement even a couple years ago, we were really ecstatic to see more games being played and that investment going into the women's game. So CONCACAF Nations League, once again, Final Four here now for the men. You had already mentioned it, that yes, USA and Mexico, they're in it, but the other two teams are different now, right? I think the last final was Costa Rica and Honduras, so now you have Canada and Panama. So we're seeing a bit of parity here. How else would you like to see Nations League evolve?
Well, I think if you look at it, the new format, there'll be newer teams in the Nations League A, and so those are an opportunity for those teams to start knocking off some of the more traditional names that we hear, and so I expect some more upsets to happen along the way. And when we get to the Final Four, yes, I mean you would bet on some of the favorites to be there, but don't be surprised to have some new teams again in next time's Final Four. And because I think with the expansion of the Nations League A, you're going to have some teams that are pretty hungry in there that finally have an opportunity to play against the sort of the more traditional giants of CONCACAF. And I think some of those fixtures are not necessarily going to be on home soil for the Giants, on away soil. And, those are some of the tough places to play in. Sometimes some of our bigger countries are not very comfortable playing away. And we've seen that along the way at times. And I think it's an opportunity for them too to really test their mettle on maybe what is not a comfortable fixture away to maybe a smaller stadium, a more hostile stadium, a pitch that's maybe not traditional like we saw in Curacao, where some of our players had to play on a turf pitch, which is obviously okay by the rules, but it's not, I'm sure, is something that some of our top players are not used to. So those are things that are always in the mix when you're playing in these qualification tournaments, and it's really throughout the globe. You see this, not just in CONCACAF.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know the players and Herdman in particular, obviously he wants his players to have that experience playing elsewhere. But I do want to also just kind of end here a little bit with just Canada's reputation. Obviously, they've been dubbed, right, the kings of CONCACAF because of what they did in World Cup qualifying. Now they're going to, though, right, try to put the crown on their head here, right, with getting a trophy for the first time in 23 years. Do you think Canada, though, is getting the respect outside of CONCACAF and, the region itself? Where do you also want to see it grow to get that respect on the global stage too?
Yeah, listen, I think I think it's a bit of a Canadian trait. We think we're there before we're actually there. I think sometimes I think we need to put the pom poms down a little bit. To be quite frank with you, it was great that we qualified for the Men's World Cup. Maybe it wasn't, it was a great experience there, but also a lot of lessons learned there. Obviously, we have some world class talent in our mix. Kings of CONCACAF, I'm not sure that's really appropriate. You want World Cup qualifying. Well, you don't win anything. You just qualify for the World Cup. I know it's used as a branding mechanism, but if you want to be Kings of CONCACAF, you got to win the Gold Cup. You got to win the Nations League. You have to have sustained success, not for 2 years, but for 20 years, like Mexico and the U.S. has had. Then we could start giving ourselves some titles. But, I think it's time we just focus on the football, focus on getting results. We have the talent to be Kings of CONCACAF. That is without an absolute doubt. But we need to have some victories, some trophies, and some sustainability here. So, this is not about what happened in 22. This is what's going to happen between 23 and 30. We have a very unbelievable generation of players. They're not just great players, but I know most of them personally. They're great men on and off the field, and they have a real opportunity of changing the vernacular when it comes to when people speak about Canadian football. And I think, and I hope that the success on the field will lead to that. But I think we need to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more disciplined in our approach, and learn from other countries in the world that have had a very sustained success, even in CONCACAF. With all due respect, Costa Rica has had sustained success, and so has obviously U.S. and Mexico. And when we start getting to that sustainability, I think that's when we can start using those words.
Yeah, well, they want to prove that it wasn't lightning in a bottle, and they want to make sure that they can start filling up that trophy case. That's for sure. Victor, appreciate you taking the time, and enjoy the festivities in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So a strong message at the end there too by Victor, and we've touched on this, right? The Canadian men have done things that they haven't done in like 30 years. There are some great moments and some history, being made here, right? But at the end of the day, they still don't have that trophy since Gold Cup 2000. So does that emphasize just how important this week is?
Absolutely. No long talking from me. You said the Kings of CONCACAF. You got to win. You got to get a trophy. Yeah. You got to get hardware. Plain and simple.
Hardware is what matters. We love playing games here. Although somebody, even though I whooped you in trivia fair and square,
did.
suddenly he thinks I'm the cheater. So, wait.
Are you looking?
I'm not looking.
You could have went down
So
with your
there's
eyes
a-
like this, but you went.
Okay, it's a OneNation box of surprises.
Anyone who follows One Soccer knows that a certain gentleman that is 6'3", Ollie Platt,
Listen.
made this box. This is some ghetto brilliance, though. Box of
Anything could be in
surprises.
there. There could be a squirrel in there. There could be old chewing gum in there. Box of surprises.
Oh, thank you, Ollie.
What there are names. So they're names. There are 5 players from each of the final 4 teams. So 5 from Canada, Panama, Mexico, USA. We are going to choose 5 in total. And what we're going to do, those players will be our players. Whoever scores the most goals, is that what it is? Like they just win? These are
An
just
assist.
goals and assists. So you have the opportunity of the 5 that you take. You could put 1 back. If you pull out a name that you don't like, you can put 1 back.
Okay.
But I know what I'm going to do.
You said you're gonna pick whatever 5 you pick.
Whatever
she says she's
5
gonna
I
keep.
pick
I
are gonna-
guarantee you that is not true.
No, they're gonna
She's
be
like,
my 5 guys.
The 5 I picked. You're not gonna do that. You
They're
wanna
gonna,
go first?
They're going to be my 5 guys. Watch
But
this.
yo, don't look. I'm just gonna here. I'm gonna. do
I've
this for you.
never looked.
I'm gonna do that for you. Just put your hand in. You don't need to look.
Ooh, I think
Look
I
at it.
already
It's
ripped
okay.
the bag.
Just go get it.
So I'm going to, okay, so I got 1.
Who'd you get?
Oh, Jonathan David! Can you see this close up? Yes! Jonathan David! Jonathan David! I don't have to put that back. Sorry, everyone.
probably
Your,
wanna keep
your
him.
eardrums. I'm sorry. Who do you got?
Santiago Jimenez.
Okay.
From Mexico.
Mexico, hey. Just hold on to that.
Just pick your thing, bro. Pick your person.
Here we go. Hold
Who
on.
do you have? I'm so upset though. You started with Jonathan
I
David.
started with
Like,
Jonathan I win already. I win.
no, relax.
Oh, Christian Pulisic of
What the heck is happening?
Of the USA. Thank you. Just
Let
gonna
me
put that
scramble
there.
this up. Season it a little bit.
I am so.
100% you're looking,
I
no?
am so. Oh my God. Who do you have? I see
Alexis
Mexico.
Vega.
Okay, listen.
Vega, Mexico. I guess I'm.
You better hope
Nah, look,
Mexico makes the final.
Alive? Or score some goals. Come. Just put your hand in. Why do you keep looking? Just put your hand in.
I'm not looking.
Like, you're such a cheater, man.
I'm looking at you in the eye. You at home right now. How am I cheating at the moment?
How many did you take?
1.
Who is it?
So Henry Martin. Henry Martin.
Perfect. We're starting to even out now. I like this.
From Mexico.
No disrespect, Henry. All right, come on, baby.
It's okay. You're not putting anyone back? What do you got?
Nah, I'm putting him back.
Oh, I saw that it was another Mexico.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you've
I'm
got to
putting that
mix
back.
it up a little bit. Mix it up. I agree with
I'm not even gonna tell you guys who it was.
you. You're fully
I'm gonna
looking, but
disrespect.
whatever. Who do you have?
What is going on?
Who do you have? I see Panama.
Alberto Quintero from Panama. What happened to my Canadians?
I need to work on my pronunciation of things, by the way. I'm looking at yours going, oh,
Getting nervous?
please.
I'm upset that I lost already.
Give me
Who is
another
this?
Canadian. Give me Canada. Oh, Gio Reyna, USA.
All right, here we
Bum, 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 bum. All right, here we go. You've already put your 1 back, by the way.
Yes!
Who do you got?
Yes!
Who do you got?
Larino! Kale, and let's go, baby.
Oh.
Yeah, no, yo, I needed that. Let's go. I needed that. Yeah, you're nervous, eh?
Shoot. Come on. Just Davies Buchanan.
Yeah, this is a big one for both of us, to be honest. Yo, pick it out, man.
But they're so long.
Hey, Hope. Who is it?
Waterman from Panama.
That
Okay.
ain't it.
It's okay, I got from all 4.
That ain't it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You can put that back if you want.
No, I'm keeping it. What do you got?
Oh, my goodness.
Who do you have?
Uriel and Tuna.
Shoot, maybe I do want to put it back. Where's Davies?
Oh, so what happened to, I'm not putting it back no matter what.
No,
I'm
I'm not. I'm
it.
keeping my guys, but I'm just wondering, where is Davies?
So what are you doing?
No.
You're trying to cheat and switch? I'm
Oh,
gonna
I'm
just
trying
watch
to
this
find
pile right here.
Davies. Oh, I got Eustachio, but that doesn't count anymore. Anyways, there we go.
Okay,
We got
so who's
our
your
guys.
squad?
I got David, Pulisic, Martin, Reyna, and Waterman.
I got Santiago Jimenez, Quintero, Carlarin, Alexis Vega, and Uriel Antuña.
All right, here we go. We're going to find out who wins. So which of our guys, right? So whoever has
You're
the
looking
most
good.
goals and
Yeah, and assists.
assists.
Yo, but honestly, Laren's bagging a hat trick, so it don't matter.
All right, so the box of surprises worked out in my favor. We don't know what our prize is if we win. Yet to be determined. Either way, happy CONCACAF Nations League final, everybody.